Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special episode of Colin's podcast, during which if you guys don't know me, my name is Shanti, and I have been a guest on Colin's podcast once before. And in this special episode, we are going to interview Colin himself. And so, Ava, whenever you're ready, can we invite our special guest, Colin Walker, into the studio?
Hello, Shanti.
Hi, Colin. Are you ready? Are you ready to be interviewed?
I don't think I'll ever be ready for this interview of this nature anyway. It's lovely to see you. Thank you so much for doing this.
It's good to see you, Colin. So I know that this was my idea. I suggested it. And I suggested it because I wanted to know, because, I've been having some conversations with you and I got to know you a little better than you let other people know you. And so you turn out to be quite a fascinating individual. And we thought it might be a good idea to put you on the spot and to ask you some questions about yourself.
Well, you certainly put me on the spot, didn't you? I was a bit shocked. I caved into this basically, didn't I? I was trying to resist it. So, but it is what it is. So, yeah, it's nice to be here with you. And I just want to say hello to everybody and thanks for joining us. So, hi, Chanda.
Hi,
Hello.
Chanda. And so everyone who's tuning in live, please put your questions into the chat as well. So, I'm not the only one putting Colin on the spot. Let's all put Colin on the spot. Joint activity.
Hi, Francis. Lovely to have you with us. Shanti's cornered me. Deepfieldhealing.com. Tell us about that first, anyway. Let's have a look.
That's my website where I offer things like healing, as the name would imply. And I also have a little mystery school going, an Egyptian mystery school where we did it with Menorca Consciousness Group as well. We did the Osiris presentation. And I also offer an annual course, a 3-month course on the Egyptian goddesses. So if anyone's interested in that, that's also up there.
Yes. Jump
Oh,
onto.
and we're going to do, before I forget, this is really important. We're going to offer a Temple of Isis healing circle on a monthly basis through Menorca Consciousness Group. So that's by donation only. It's free and available to everybody. So please join us for that. That should be really beautiful.
I think so as well. I'm really looking forward to it. Seriously looking forward to it. So, and it's the Temple of Isis healing. And you're going to be leading these sessions for us.
Yes. It's a circle. The concept is that it would be a healing circle. So we would all be gathered in a ceremonial space. We'll call in the goddesses, Isis, of course, but also other Netaru, and we all participate. So we all are there to hold the space to heal one another. So whoever wants to step into the circle for healing then receives from everybody who's in the circle.
And this is going to be. We've agreed to do it monthly, haven't we? Or you've agreed to do it
starting next weekend.
Next Sunday it starts, everybody, guys. So Temple of Isis healing starting next Sunday with Shanti. It's going to be beautiful. I know it is. And the thing what I like, no, it's not a question what I like. The thing which is clearly obvious in your sessions, when you speak and do the offering, what you do with the Egyptians, i.e., with those spiritual beings, that we clearly feel that the presence of that energy, that space, what you create and hold, is, I don't want to just say it's so light, it's got so much more in it. There's almost layers and layers of energy, which is tangible in the atmosphere. And I don't know, they're so beneficial. So I really need to say I appreciate that you're doing them for us. So thank you so much.
Well, it's the audience who brings it through. So it's you guys. It's your desire. It's the collective.
Yeah, collectively. Brilliant stuff. Hi, Busher. Just want to say hello to Busher and Sue. Thanks for joining us. Margaret and Ria. It's so nice to have you guys with us. I've been put on the spot, guys, so
Ooh,
I'm going to get
a good crowd. Hi, Sue. Hi, Margaret. I
It looks
worship
like I'm going to get grilled.
Francis. Chanda has a question. So Chanda, this is not, I'll answer your question, but then we're going to put the focus on Colin because this is Colin's interview. Could you heal the past? Yes, absolutely. You can heal the past. You can heal past lives. You can heal future lives because time is an illusion. Everything is really just now. We can heal timelines. But the truth is, I am not doing it. I am not the one doing the healing. We're calling through higher beings who are supporting us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not even going to add to that because I think you just answered it as you went. So beautiful. So what we're
All
doing
right, Colin. So my first burning question, my
oh.
burning question for you is: we all know you as Colin Walker, but is that your real name?
Sorry for laughing. I don't even associate with names. Funny enough, I find names are very strange concepts, human concepts, which we've given each other to label and identify. And do they really help? I don't think they do. I think we're just vibrations, aren't we? We're not even forms. So why should we try to label something which we've yet to fully understand and comprehend? So that's my answer to that.
So perhaps that's your way of saying it is not actually your real name. This is fun already. Okay, Colin, next question. We let you off the hook for that one.
Oof.
Next question. So we've all noticed, and this I've noticed because I've got a boring American accent, that you have a charming British accent of some sort. But because I live in America, I don't know where that is from. Where in England are you from, Colin?
That's very interesting
Where did you grow up?
because the language aspect, I think probably some of my original dialect is not hidden, but below the surface because I've travelled. I travelled from a young age to different countries, most of the time on my own. So I kind of picked up some kind of, I'll say, vibrational resonance from different locations. So there's a slight covering of my original. But to ask where I was born, where do I originate from? No, where was I born or where do I originate? What was the question again?
I think you want to answer where you originated from.
Sorry. The same place as you and everybody else. And I think this is where we should go, isn't it? This is kind of where we're supposed to be getting to, where we let go of the old and we go, okay, we're all from the same place. That will stop so much divide and division, won't it? It'd be like, where are you from? Where are you from? And often when I do get asked, well, more often than not, when I get asked that question, I do say the same place as you and everybody else. With an intention to give it an example. I think it was in Austria, maybe 3 years ago. And a guy asked me where I was from. And those were my words to him. Same place as you and everybody else. And I think when it's a genuine question like you're asking, for genuine purposes, then I will then still say from the north of England. But when I'm out in the world, in different countries, predominantly that's my answer to them because it avoids, and the reaction is amazing because it just kind of, once they catch what I've just said, they're like, the defenses drop straight away and they just start smiling or laughing. And they go, of course, why didn't I think of that sort of thing? Not that I'm saying I was the first person to think of that, but so I think when we move, or as we move through this transition, we'll get to that point of resonance where we'll all feel and sense and embody that will all come from that pure source. And therefore that question will no longer be not so much relevant, it probably won't even be asked. People won't even think about it. So I kind of just wanted to, I didn't want to avoid the question abruptly. So I just wanted to put that extra facet onto it.
So, Colin, when you started this earthly voyage in this particular body, in this form, where did your soul choose to land? Where specifically in the north of England did you land?
Where did well, I think I chose to land on my head because it's been hurting ever since I got here, like probably everybody else's. I think we all must have been a bit backward before we, to choose to come here was, I don't know. I think we can all agree on that, most of us anyway. So yeah, England, in the north of England, near York, in the York vicinity, and that's where some of the accent, but I haven't got a full Yorkshire accent, so I'm kind of in that space. Why it's interesting, isn't it? Because what makes the soul, our own individual soul, in conjunction with all others, decide what position we're going to land on this plane, i.e. what position, what location, exact location, precise location on this airplane. Because clearly we can see that determines so many aspects in our journey. If you're born in one place or another, there's so many differences. This is a question what kind of fascinates me. Why did we all land or arrive, or whatever we call it, in the location we chose to, in agreement with everybody else? And why did others decide to land there? That's an important question. Because when we're looking at the joys and the suffering of existence in this world, and peace and war, etc., putting ourselves to one side, when we look at other people's, or other souls' journeys, it's kind of astounding. And especially if we believe in that we pick this journey, we pick the people in our life, and it's all preordained by karmic, conditions. Or not so much preordained, but ordained. Beyond that concept, what you said, beyond time. Why does another soul choose to land in a location where there may be potentially horrendous conditions for that soul to bear? So I use the word fascinating, but it's not. It's that doesn't do enough respect to other souls. Francis. Yeah. Karma. I think it's a collective. We're back to the accumulated mass of karmic conditions, determining the moment we're in, and the environment we're in. We get as far as our conscious awareness is. If that makes sense, because we know when we move through what's referred to as the higher vibrations or the higher self. And I'm not 100% comfortable with that term, to be honest, because it's elevated. It's almost self-elevated. But it's a construct what we use to understand something. So we've got an accumulated mass of our karmic conditions from what we refer to previous lifetimes, past lives, previous incarnations, and that accumulated mass kind of is condensed into one thought, what says this soul is going to go to that earth and exist there. And it's going to have a certain amount of conscious awareness, but there's going to be so much of that soul's awareness what it's not going to be conscious of. That's going to be on other vibrations, such as, or other vibrations of our own awareness, such as the higher self frequencies, which we know is a multitude. We can't just go, oh, I've got 10 levels. No, I've got 10 frequencies to my higher self. We know we're talking infinity here, so we're trying to draw on all of those aspects in order to find the deepest and purest wisdom to guide us in each moment we move or exist here, i.e., thinking, speaking, and action. So yeah, I know. Sorry, I've just did from York.
And so we're gonna find out a little bit more. So what was it like growing up in your family? Do you have siblings?
I do. Yeah, it was amazing. Absolutely. Um, I feel immensely blessed, and I'm going to probably make this very short. Um, immensely blessed because I was fortunate on one side. Um, there was a soul there which was just emanating love at all times, and on the opposite side, there was a soul which had so much um, almost authority. I don't know why I'm using that word. Authoritative energy, which really helped on so many levels. Um, discipline, respect, truth, and honesty, etc. But and between them both, they brought you into the moment. And then with the siblings being around, you got to learn so many facets of human nature by living in a family space with so many others, because each one of them was emanating different frequencies of their own soul. Um, and you knew when to sometimes. There was a lot of laughter. Oof. Thank you, sir. You might just save me from that question. I was blessed. Do you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
I was leaving it up to you if you want to answer it or keep going.
Do you feel that it may also be about energies and frequencies of the soul, and also the environment upon which they land, and what the soul informed may be capable of withstanding and working with through? So, shall we answer this? So I need to go. Sorry. I think we should try and answer it. What do you think?
I think you should try to answer that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree entirely, Sue. I think when we let's see if we can get that frequency moving, because we know we are form without form. I'm just going to say as it. We're form without form, so therefore it tells us we're beyond both of those because they are part of duality. But the physical form, as we understand it or perceive it, is like the vehicle for the soul. We understand that aspect, and yet when we perceive the physical form, we know that's also formless. So we're only perceiving the form through a certain lens of our own perception or our own perception of awareness. And yet, if we shift our awareness, our conscious awareness, not just through meditation and going to the higher self or chanting, etc., moving the mind to altered states, if we alter our conscious awareness, the one we're working with now, to those other frequency or to another frequency of its awareness, then it reflects that the physical form isn't the solid construct what a different frequency will inform us that it is. We can say our ordinary mind will reflect that the physical form is made up of particles, atoms, and it's a solid appearance. And yet, by moving to a different frequency of our conscious awareness, then we can see beyond that. In effect, not only is the physical form not a form, that it is a construct. So what is beyond the physical form? Which then opens the door to so many other questions. Because if the physical form is not a form, it's not so much as what is it, it's what else is going on, if that makes sense. It expands into the space around itself. We can step briefly into emptiness, the concept of emptiness, not so much the void or space itself, but the emptiness of everything, where we're not holding on to any thoughts of the reality we've been conditioned or we believe to exist. We're talking literally, like Sue says, frequencies of awareness. So in one of those aspects where we become expansive, trying to understand this, what we've got, one aspect of that is then time itself is merely a frequency. And we've slowed our mind down, we've diluted everything, slowed our mind down or slowed our awareness down to a certain frequency to see the solidity of this physical environment. And yet, at the point of death or point of arrival of the soul on this plane, and the point of what we call death or transition, and we often say the soul leaves the body. And there's a time kind of frame, it indicates a time frame. But is that the case? Is that reality? Is it possibly that in that one instance, in this concept the way everything just is, and the concepts of there is no past and no future, that something else takes place, a lot more than what we actually think. Even spiritual minds, medium, psychic, whatever we all understand in these spiritual teachings, and any other religious teaching regarding that point of death, does something else completely different take place? Because it all happens in a moment. What happens in that moment? Do we step out and go somewhere, or does the body simply fall away and the soul is still remaining there, present in that space, like it always has done? And by its own awareness, that's when it starts kind of shifting through frequencies again. If that makes sense. Good question, sir. Was it a question or statement?
So we are not going to answer all the questions that are coming in because we need to keep the focus on Colin.
Because Shanti wants to interview me.
Yes, you are here to interview Colin. So Colin, tell us more about your siblings.
Well, sorry. Well, there were several of them.
Where in the order were you?
I was. There was actually 9 siblings, and I think I was number 7 in the somewhere along that process.
That's so funny. That's exactly. My dad was also 9 siblings, and he was number 7.
Well, karma's ripened. You see, no such thing as synchronicity. It just is. So, yeah, there was amazing. There was all amazing. The thing in that space, because I'm looking at space now, in that space, I was still kind of always the observer, oddly enough, in that space with those other beings, with those other souls, i.e. my brothers and sisters. The one thing, the biggest thing out of it all was the joy and laughter. I need to go. Sorry. Happiness and letting go. You couldn't hold on to anything. If there was any hateful, painful, negative, or disagreements, anything of that nature, any energy what ripened of that nature had to be dealt with, and the next day you could not allow it to resurface. That had to be let go. So one thing what I found out later in life was how quick the letting go process took place in that space, because that was the rule of the space, which was you couldn't continue it the next day and the next day. You couldn't drag these things on. It's like, whoa, that was yesterday, it's gone. And that was final. That was a final statement used in that home generally by my father.
Was that something your parents cultivated in the home environment?
Well, I think that came from, oh, very much.
Mm,
It was present in the space all at all times. You could not hang on to anything because of all the negative connotations what take place by hanging on to something. The bitterness, the resentment, a chance to grow and fester. Almost a sense of revenge could come from that. None of those aspects had a chance to manifest afterwards. Um, and obviously, clearly, that came from the space where they came from their background.
mm,
Without opening that up, they had their own um, extremely difficult circumstances to contend with. And of course, that was what was in placed within the home was born out of that. And there was always respect, like for instance, there was respect for everybody's business. Um, you didn't do your dirty washing in public like you see these days. It's all plastered all over Facebook. It's like wow. In them days, it's like no, no, no. You do not do your dirty work. It stays in them walls. It gets sorted in them walls, and and that was part. There was so many aspects in the foundation within that one space. When I look back at it, it's like, Christ, that was like crazy. There was so many spiritual teachings taking place in that space, and not one person knew about it. While they was taking place, it's only when you step out of it and go through the process, and you go, okay. And letting go was letting go. Looking back, letting go was a really good one because you could not take anything forward with it.
mm.
It's like sort it out, talk about it. Whether you disagree with somebody or not, you accept that other person's opinion. And there was always that sense of somewhere along the line getting the correct sense of not justice but settlement, where everybody was still settled. So there's this constant theme of energies flying all over the place on all levels. There was at one point there was 10 people in the house on a regular basis. You try and sort that out. Five, there was 6 males and 4 females. So you can imagine. And despite all the ups and downs and the roller coaster of your thoughts and emotions and experiences, it was always joy and laughter. There was so much laughter every day in that space. It was incredible. So
And did you
yeah,
feel you were allowed to express yourself? Did you feel that you had to suppress, or did you feel allowed to express?
you could both. You could express to a point where if it was bordering on being silly and stupid and you was being ridiculous, then it was stopped.
Mm,
So if you didn't express it fully and you didn't release and clear it fully, then you'd suppress the I suppose the remnants of that. But like everybody, I suppose everybody, or generally most people, um, humans, we have a tendency to suppress so much. You know, I mean, we know there's a reason now. There's a reason because what we're doing is we're kind of gathering and collecting energy, gathering and collecting particles, atoms of force and emotional energy, and pushing them into this melting pot within us in order to get that chemical reaction what we're after achieving. One thing I found out more than anything is every day, throughout the day, we are accumulating energy in order to create build up to a critical mass with our thoughts and emotions, our own and the environment and what people are saying. We're packing it in every single day. All of us are doing it. This is where energy is really working. This is, I think, a big truth about how energy is working on a cosmic scale. We are transformers of energy. Therefore, we rely on all the experiences we go through to put them in that pot to create that critical mass, and so we can have those chemical reactions. And then the interesting bit, what I find is, if you take any human being anywhere in the world, they are doing this every day, all day long. We're calling them human beings, but we know we're beings of light,
mm,
and transforming and alchemizing energies on every single level we can imagine, in order to get us to get to that next step. And this is where we then go to awakening. What is an awakening? An awakening is simply a chemical reaction of our thoughts, emotions, and mixed with spiritual energies or ethereal energies in this body, this pot, what we call a body. And it's like bubbling all the time and pressure's building. It's like a pressure cooker. And every single awakening is born of a critical mass and chemical reaction. And some people have a mild awakening, others are having, it's a bit deeper and more expensive, and then you can have a full blown awakening. That's when the lids come off completely and the pressure cooker's dissolved as a result of that chemical reaction. What led you to explore the Buddhist tradition and particularly you were
Let's
Nigel?
let's keep the questions in the chat now, and I'll feed them to Colin when the time comes. The time
Oh
comes.
my goodness. So sorry, Sue. Looks like somebody's
But
got the
definitely
boss in.
keep adding them to the chat because I'm queuing them up. Queuing them up.
Right. We're going to get to them then, Sue.
We'll get to those too. We can't
That's
we
it.
can't we can't have Colin losing focus. This is this is the concern. It's
I
hard to
can't
keep
even.
focused on himself.
I can't even believe I've caved into this.
This is beautiful. You're doing great.
Ooh.
You're doing great. I'm very impressed. So Colin, this is you're gonna like this question. Can you tell us, do you have a memory of your earliest spiritual experience?
Now then, I don't have one particular what kind of leaps out. I have maybe a couple. Maybe this is the best one to describe or because it mixes with something else. Well, I always used to see. I was always sensitive. I was an empath since I was a baby. Anyway, sorry about that. I just couldn't help but throw that one in. So we're all sensitive, aren't we? And one of the earliest ones I remember was there was a guide, a spiritual guide, always standing against the wall in my bedroom, against the door. And I was aware which guide it was. And he was present, I don't want to say every single night, but, very, very regular, at minimum several times a week. And it was always that certain moment where I was, that moment where you're coming from conscious state to sleep state. That was that moment. He seemed to capture by his own awareness what moment to make himself shown or to show himself to me and make sure that my awareness was seeing him very clearly, as if I'm watching you standing there. And I was never, ever, not once, fearful of it. I was totally comfortable. And I believe there were certain reasons why he was present. The protective nature was there, obviously, and he was dressed in a certain way, certain manner. It wasn't, somebody what we would associate with a previous family member who had gone to spirit. This was a specific guide, and that was from a very young age, very, very young age, and that stayed and remained for. I couldn't, off the top of my head, I couldn't say how many years. So, but it was ever present. And then in between them times, there was lots of different experiences what was taking place from a young age. So it wouldn't be fair or correct of me to say, well, when I landed on the planet, I was aware of spirit, or when I was 3 or 2 or all the rest of it. It wouldn't be correct for me to say it. That would be that was clearly, definitely one of the early ones, early experiences what I'd had. And I can probably say this, and I know I'm cautious, but I'm going to, because I know this is going to go out public, or it is. There was a very, very strong connection every single day to Egyptians, every evening. That was the same for many years, every single night. I had a certain process each night. Even though I lived in this, household where everybody, once everything went quiet, it's almost as if my awareness stepped straight into that vibration as easy as anything. Where those realms, or into the presence of those realms very easily. And very beautiful and very extremely peaceful. I can probably add to it and say that the biggest thing I always remembered in most moments, I had the most profound or deep or whatever we call it, frequency or vibration within my mind for everybody in the world to be at peace and for everybody to be happy. Every single one. It's not that I got affected by sadness. It wasn't so much where I took it on board, where damage, or there was any damage from it. Because the overriding factor was, from a young age, it doesn't matter what we faced or what we face. Somewhere inside us, there is an energy what can give us happiness on multiple levels, and we've got the capacity to tap into that. And I suppose that with that family is why I probably laughed and joked so much in the face of so many experiences. Pain, we're looking at experiences. Pain is not exclusive. Nobody's got the monopoly on pain, have they? Everybody's encountered their own painful experiences, all of us, each and every one of us. Nobody's got the monopoly on it. But we can say collectively, we all have the monopoly on happiness. And it's there inside each of us. It's in that light of I don't even want to say light of our soul. It's present in our light at all times. If we just allow it to come through. So that was where my personal kind of early years and childhood was. And the happiness of just, that quest for peace has always stayed consistent. In fact, it became stronger later when I started opening up to all the other vibrations, what's going on the planet.
So, Colin, did you feel like you were different from your siblings, or did you feel that everybody was the same way on the inside?
Well, it's a good question, and I'm pleased you've asked it, to be honest. I'm really pleased you've asked this question, because this question has kind of lingered within me. I think everybody feels that they're different. I think every soul feels that they're different from either the family members or everybody else around them. And I looked at this, I contemplated this for some time, because this concept intrigued me. When you hear people say, well, I was always different, I always felt different, as if it's exclusive to them. And it's like, well, surely everybody feels different, and over the years I realized most people did in fact feel different in the family or from other people. And I think what interested me is it stems from somewhere. That comment, that thought stems from somewhere. And I think part of it is the mind wants to be recognized. So he'll say, I'm different because we like something what's different. The outside world gets fascinated when something is different. We almost get drawn to it. Oh, that's different. Let me go have a look at it. So when a human says, I always felt different, straight away, it's going to attract a certain degree of um, uh, curiosity by the outside from others. And I think it stems from a need, some kind of insecurity within people when people say, well, I was different as a child. And then I started unraveling it and thought, this is consistent for all of us here. What we're saying and trying to tell each other is not so much that we are unique, as in, special. I mean, um, but in so much where we can safely say we are really, really something special, each one of us. And we shouldn't be afraid to say that because it doesn't come from the egotistical I energy. It comes from the logical fact that we can recognize that sheer pure beauty of not just who we are, but who everyone else is. We know we have a tendency to intellectualize spiritual teachings. We think it, we're talking. Um, and it's wonderful because it helps us so much on so many, levels. But there's nothing more special than feeling and sensing it in the depth of our being. And knowing and looking every time we look at somebody or the world or people, knowing that they are so beautiful, exceptionally beautiful. And I don't mean in the form of cosmic beings and fancy words. I mean just in the raw, pure, untainted authenticity and through those eyes and seeing the beauty in everybody. So then we go back to, do I feel different? Did I feel different? Um, I would say not really, because I felt everybody felt, equally the same. That sense of equanimity was always present. I'm no different from everybody else type of thing. And I think we should kind of get rid of this concept where the ego keeps trying to catch us out on things, and kind of make the waters of logic and truth and authenticity murky, and really clearly see and define what the ego is so that we can see the purity of all the rest of the stuff, if that makes sense. Because the ego has a tendency to creep in on all levels of our awareness, especially up to a certain point. So you do recognize the ego and you do not only start dissolving, but you dissolve it. I'm big, probably anyway, that the ego can be dissolved completely. It's served its purpose for the evolution of the species. So it's on its way out now. Thankfully. You know what I'm doing here.
So we're going to jump ahead a little bit because we're already at the 45-minute mark. So we know you're well traveled, Colin. You mentioned that your accent is layered with many different places that you have lived. You mentioned Egypt. Um, would you, I don't even know if it's too big of a question to ask. So where have you lived? Where all have you lived? Not just traveled to, but actually lived. And then where have you traveled to and what is your favorite place? Or your top three favorite places? Make it easier.
Oh, right, okay. Oh, I thought we was going to go off on a spiritual thing. Okay, you've pinned me down on this one physically, right? Um, I feel very blessed to have been. Um, when I was a kid, I just wanted to get out. I wanted that the space was in front of me, and I just wanted to go in it. So we can say the world is your oyster. Well, it was space to me. It was literally space and clarity and filled with jewels and majestic beings in the form of humans. And I wanted to venture out there and see and meet and communicate Um, one of the things what I've always loved doing is, rather than just when I've been somewhere in a country, as much as I love the sun and I can sometimes lay on the beach, not often, but sometimes, um, I was never drawn to that. I was drawn to the culture, the people, the way they tick and the way they think. Now, I know this is kind of a regular thing and thing with people, but it was the depth of the culture I wanted to find out. It's almost like I was looking for the source of that culture, whichever one it was. And later I realized, with a spiritual perception or perspective, I kind of had a mild fascination with, for a very short period, with DNA, and how it worked with different cultures. Because then it was leading to, that then led me to karma in one respect, because it's all associated again back to karma, where the makeup of a culture is as a result of karma, including the genetic makeup. It's got to be. All the, everything is there to understand this. So one of my favorite places is Japan. Absolutely. Um, Funny enough, I can say this, I need to cough, I'm sorry. Japan's got its own awareness collectively. Um, but I wouldn't go to any one particular. I'm at that point where I can't have the favourites as such, because that would be that discriminating mind. Iceland is stunning. Iceland is, when I went to Iceland, they said, Iceland's got its own energy. They used to advertise it in their tourist magazine, the energy of Iceland. And when I went to Iceland and stayed, some time there, that's probably the most honest advertising I've ever come across, because that was true. Energy has got, Iceland has got some very specific energy to it, and which it can be profoundly peaceful and still. There's a stillness in Iceland. But then European countries, South America. So I've got no favourites. I think it would be wrong for me to have. And I think maybe that's part of the teachings. It's probably wrong for all of us to have a favourite. We may have, a one what might have that little bit extra something to us. But I think, we're just visiting the planet, aren't we? So, and it's stunning. The beauty of this planet is phenomenal, phenomenal. Just today, I was in the car out, and we turned a bend along country lane, and just a wide expanse of yellow and green, bright yellow and green, and it just hits your eyes. But cultures, yeah, I do like cultures, and I do not believe at all in this separateness what we're seeing in the world today. We're getting dragged into a pit, into an abyss of dense energy by this, what's going on. And we somehow have to stop it, or nature or the light is going to stop it, because we are supposed to get on with each other. Regardless of what some of these, and I'm going to change the frequency here, but regardless of what some of these lunatics out there are thinking, that we're supposed to be separate and that they should be over there. They. It's like, that's the separation aspect. And when we go to the human heart of any culture, any race on the planet, when we go to the purity of the human heart, there is a very clear, distinct commonality between all of us. We have the most profound love for each other, and generally we are more than capable of getting along peacefully and coexisting. There is only one human species, and to see what we're seeing is clearly intentional by a certain group or one specific energy. One specific. If we go to the source of it, one particular energy, which does not want to see this light shining on this planet. And that energy has got to be pacified, and the most profound compassion has got to be wrapped around it. Otherwise, we're going to see the end of this species on this planet. And if nature's ordained that, then so be it. But I don't believe nature's ordained it. I think on the big scheme of things, although this scheme is what my awareness, as far as my awareness can stretch to, spiritually speaking and cosmically speaking, in that small, particle of thought, whatever's going on the planet, it's been ordained, and the light is going to penetrate any darkness what's here presently, currently. So I'm going to have to pull back at this point because I'm going to start taking this conversation in a different direction. But there is one particular energy on this planet what's doing it and causing this divide and division and inciting hatred and cruelty beyond belief. And my opinion is nobody with a serious touch of conscience wants to see any soul suffer in the means and ways which we're witnessing. And we just need to keep this light shining as bright as possible. And we need to emanate it to the darkest corner of this plane, because that's what we've come for. That's the reason why we've come to the world, into this plane, not onto the physical world, or not just onto the physical world, but what we call the earth and the planet, but it into this plane. And we can do that still with joy and love and laughter and happiness.
I think that that's a great segue to Sue's question, which I think you answered in many ways, which is what led you to explore the Buddhist tradition and the particular lineages that you were or are drawn to? I also want to ask you if you were ever drawn to Zen Buddhism since you were in Japan.
Okay, so in reverse, I was drawn to Zen Buddhism because of the stillness factor, to the stillness of the mind, if there is a mind. And to answer Sue's question, or to try and speak on Sue, what Sue's for, I think two factors was playing out, Sue. One, I was personally always interested in Buddhism of a certain nature. Generally speaking, it was just surfaced or ripened within me. So it was there, even before I had the experience of understanding, start coming into the understanding of spiritual teachings. And it was after when I started understanding spiritual teachings that I had the thought to go into a Buddhist center. I suppose I should reverse it and just be totally clear and honest. When I had the, if we call it awakening, we'll keep it the same as everybody else's. When I had the experience of that, I was faced with a choice, a very interesting one, because during the awakening, I had emptied everything out. I'd let go, transformed, and emptied everything out. I was just completely empty. There was no old stuff hanging on in or around me. Everything was just elevated, ascended light, angelic beings, and the God consciousness, etc. Every moment of every day for years. from that moment, years after, and it's still present, obviously, in its form, in a certain form. But when I came out of that awakening process, it was in that moment where the choice presented itself, whether to, and this is going to sound crazy, whether to walk to Tibet and go into a temple. I don't know what would have taken place, how long would I have been there, never to be seen again, probably, I don't know. Or I might have lasted 2 minutes and got fed up with it and come out, I don't know. But I had the thought, a very strong thought to go. And equally, I had a very strong thought because during that experience of the awakening, when I came out of it, immediately in that moment and that first few days afterwards, I was no longer the same, completely changed, completely. The old Colin literally died, or dissolved, probably a better way of putting it. And the automatic instinct and intuitive thought and inspiration from whatever was present was the understanding, or a level of understanding, to a point of the world and life, emotions and thoughts, and the universe and light and spirit and angelic realms, all this lot. Where do I put it? And I felt that it had to be shared, like we all do. We have this experience that if information must be shared, knowledge must be shared. It's almost a sin to keep it to ourselves. It's wrong to keep it to ourselves. Okay, we've got to apply wisdom as to when and where we share that knowledge. So that was present. The need, or not, it wasn't a need. It was beyond that. But it was clear that it had to be shared. Or do I go into Tibet and literally walk there? And I really wanted to walk there. And all the energy was present for me to walk there. There were going to be no trains, no buses, no nothing. I wanted to do a pilgrimage, what would be called a pilgrimage, but it wasn't to me. But I just wanted to walk. So that was the choice. So I decided it would have been incorrect of me, knowing what I had come out with of that experience, to then take myself out of society as I understood it then. Not so much from family and friends, and I was okay with that. If I got, there wasn't that. I wasn't challenged by any of those, aspects. But I made a conscious decision not to go, because we could see the state of the world, and it needed sharing. And the other thing with that, recalling it, that memory, that thought, was if this elevated experience, expanded experience, and I still can't find a complete, honest term to describe that awakening. I can't. I've kind of looked for a term to find it, and to call it an awakening, it really doesn't do justice to the light of those experiences for any of us, not just me, but for any of us. But that particular experience, it just had to be shared, and inform people that what is inside each of us is angelic, that we are angelic beings. However fanciful and floaty that may sound, the reality is we are, and so much more beyond that. So when we search and look for angels and angelic beings, and we think they're out there somewhere in the heavenly realms, they're not. The species on this planet has the potential. It is there present within each and every one of us. And that light is present for all of us if we just let go of those layers of our own hate and pain and delusions, which have seeped in and crept in and they wrap themselves around our light. So that was the choice. So in that moment is where Buddhism was massive for me, and that was a huge. That was my life changing decision. That one choice between them two. So then, when I eventually, and I was going to go in earlier to a local, about 2 years later, I think no less, within months, somebody mentioned that there'd been a new Buddhist centre opened near York, funny enough. And I had the thought, shall I go? I didn't go. And funny enough, when I decided to eventually go, which was 20 years later-ish, I went into a centre and realised it was the same one what somebody had said 20 years ago. It was that exact same one in that tradition. And it was the correct one to go into because of the teachings, because the teachings are, I don't want to say pure, of course they're pure to whatever degree they are. But what's fascinating is this blend between spiritual teachings and Buddhist teachings. There is quite a deep connective tissue between them both. And I believe that's the same with all religions. The center point, if you like, is that light when we take away the dross and all the rest of it. So yeah. So, and the lineage, Mahayana lineage, it teaches you, or it reflects, and this is quite interesting when we're looking at when we're looking at the umbrella of spiritualism and the umbrella of Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism especially, they teach, or not they teach, the teachings themselves stem from the middle way and focusing the mind internally to overcome and dissolve aspects, on the path to attain enlightenment. And spiritualism and all the teachings have the same goal, enlightenment, yet it has the appearance of being the mind is focused on the external. So in Buddhism, the mind focuses internally. In spiritualism, there's a tendency to think that we've got to focus on the external, i.e. the spiritual plane. They're out there somewhere. Whereas in Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, is like, you need to sort your mind out and clear your stuff. And that's where it's like, clear the ego. The interesting part about Buddhism aspect is if we get these two functions correct, we can clear our mind through mindfulness, meditation, contemplation, and clearing, but most of all, clearing the delusion, so to speak. And I don't want to hold on to that word too much, but it's there. Clearing the delusions of our mind. We then find ourselves in the exact same position what we do when we meditate to communicate with spirit. We open up and expand. So both lead to the same point, which is extremely interesting. So on the one hand, you've got the duality playing up again, Buddhism and spiritualism, or religion and spiritualism. We can't avoid this. We are so interconnected, and everything's interconnected. I don't know. You're just sitting there letting me waffle on, Shanti. So you have to stop me.
That's the idea. So this. I love how you just walked right into this one. I think it's time to ask you Chanda's question, which is a little bit of a cheeky question, where she says, "So could you heal the past of Colin? Colin, what is in your past that you feel still needs to be healed?"
The typical Chanda. So could you heal the past of Colin? Well, let's start at the very beginning then. We can start having a bit of fun if you like. Right. So let's start. So can you bring that question back up, Ava, please? Because I want to see it clearly. Okay. Could you heal the past of Colin? There's no such thing as healing, Chanda, because there's no such thing as pain and suffering. It's merely our perception of something what's taking place, which we may, or the mind may find difficult to deal with, and therefore we associate it with pain and suffering, and by extension, we then think it needs healing. So it's that word itself is quite um, obviously it's beneficial for so many people because we're using it, but it means when we say the world needs healing, um, and I know this is going to be quite, it'll be whatever it is. Does the world need healing, or is everything what's happening just is, and our failure to accept it lead us to think that it needs healing? As for my past, Chandra, there is no past, and as for Colin, there is no Colin. So I think I might have answered Josh, Chandra. Colin doesn't exist, but that's right.
Okay, Colin. We're, we're I'm not sure if we're supposed to end exactly on the hour, but I do have one more question that I have to ask you before we wrap.
Fire away, whatever you wish.
Oh, you mentioned that the teachings, there was a great desire to share the teachings. And I know one of your great loves is to write. And I know you've written several books. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
I was trying not to advertise them. Um, yeah, we can. I suppose it's time to be open on this one. Um, before Buddhism, I was obviously, it was always involved in spiritual matters, spiritual chairs, spiritual centers, as many times a week as I possibly could. That was it. Everything from the moment I had the awakening, that was all the way through, every day, spiritual matters. And it was always philosophical. The thing is, what I found is, when we open up, or when I had the experience, then we become a clear channel. So when just for those people what are talking about clear channels or becoming a clear channel, if I may humbly, as humble as I can possibly say it, the only way a mind can create a clear channel is by removing every single thought and emotion which they are holding onto. And until every single one of those thoughts, every single one of those thoughts and emotions are either transformed or let go of what no longer appear within or around that mind, it can't be a clear channel. So, and this is where we go to, where we contaminate the channeling because we're carrying so many things that our own thoughts contaminated channeling, contaminated mediumship, even trance. If we can't get, completely out of the way and allow spirit and that spiritual guide to step in fully, completely full, then even that is not clear trance. It's not deep trance as we understand it. And I know there's variations, but the point is about being, we're talking about clear light. This is the essence of this one, because we're trying to attain clear light. And what is it and how can we get it? Clear. Empty the room. It's like a room in your house. Empty, you imagine that, a room, pick any room, think of it, and imagine it being completely empty. And then take it one step further and imagine the walls don't even exist. It's clear. It's just clear. There's nothing there. There's nothing in clarity. Nothing apart from clarity, because it can't exist. An object can't exist in clarity, because then it will no longer be clarity. There'll be something in there. And this is mind. And this means physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. When we're talking about being a clear vessel or clear channel, if we have that wish to, and obviously the conditions what we're facing at the moment we know the mind is constantly thinking, distracted, etc. It's grasping. I'd like this. I want that. The eye is there, etc. All these things. It's preventing the clear mind from coming to the surface, and so therefore, when we're talking about consciousness and the mind itself, ultimately, we're on a mission for enlightenment. We're trying to attain enlightenment, and we're using spiritual matters to attain it. And a mind gets stuck along that path and starts enjoying itself. It starts enjoying the spiritual gifts. Oh, this is mediumship. Oh, I'm a medium. Mediumship is probably just the second or third rung on a ladder, which is infinite. Because that's the ladder of enlightenment. So it doesn't matter what aspect we're drawn to or magnetized to or vibrating with, resonating with, even then, the spiritual gifts themselves, what's called the gifts or the abilities or faculties, whatever way people use, can become a distraction. And we can probably go further and say they actually are a distraction. So it brings us back to being the clear vessel and the channeling, and so much as far as writing is concerned. So after the experience of having the wish to share with people, and you mentioned it, and you mentioned these words in a conversation recently, which were it made me smile because I hold them quite close, and that's the stream of consciousness. That we are a stream of consciousness, and we just need to turn the tap on, remove the blocks, and let everything flow. So most of my early writings came as a direct result of the stream of consciousness. I was just called, the vessel was clear, it was empty, and spirit utilized that. There was 5 specific guides, what was present for about between, I would say, 12 and 17 years, and I spent most days and most evenings writing. I would go sit have coffees and 5 or 6 restaurants per day just writing because it was just flowing. There was no writer's block. Writer's block was non-existent in my awareness. It was just a constant flow of writing. I won't tell you the outcome of those writings, but then it led me to still continue to write, which I'm obviously doing today and still with the A to Z. And now the next one, Letting Go, has just been finished. Ava's finished the translation for the Czech language for the A to Z. And you put me on the spot here regarding like I said, there's a couple more bits about to come out regarding things, because it's got to be out there. It doesn't belong to me. None of it. It's got to be out there. We need to keep sharing with each other. So, yeah, this space is we've still got 1 or 2 bits to kind of put out there.
Well,
I can't tell you because I just can't tell you because I've got a list on the computer of what is there ready, and it's like I'm not saying anything.
Well, this is a perfect wrap because this brings us right now to the present moment in time. And so since we're here now, to this point, I don't want to neglect Nigel's comment or question. And
yeah, let's do some comments.
And so we can address that now.
Beyond the perception is the route to non-disease. Dis-ease. This means that our perceptions of consciousness are limiting programs that keeps us in a state of acceptance. Okay, let's have a look at this. This means that our perceptions of consciousness are limiting programs that keeps us in a state of acceptance, which in itself blocks our ultimate telepathy coming through your thoughts. Well, that's a nice statement slash question, Nigel. So I agree with you beyond perception because, well, we the only thing beyond perception up to now is knowing. Can you keep that question up, please? Keep it up. Sorry. So when we're talking about beyond perception, there's a background to that. There's a layer behind where that it's come from somewhere, and really we should be trying to find out what that aspect beyond means. That word beyond. What's behind that word? It's like, okay, what is beyond? Because if we're saying beyond the perception, then we're not just saying we've instantly removed perception and go, okay, what's behind it then? What is beyond perception? And we start looking at those realms of understanding or reality, and we can say, well, there's a knowing rather than perception. But perception is a very interesting word because in order to understand or relate to something, whether within the body or out of the body, and whatever frequency or state of awareness we are in, especially an altered state, perception will always be present because we're going to perceive what's taking place from our awareness. So we're talking awareness here. Perception is born from awareness. So we can be aware of something and then we're perceiving it. So I like the bit of to non dis-ease, okay? But we could probably play with that sentence on its own, Nigel. Beyond the perception is the root of to non-disease. I'm curious, Nigel, whether you think this stuff or whether you feel by your own first-hand experiences, mentally and emotionally and energetically, this particular teaching or understanding. This means that our perceptions of consciousness are limiting programs. Bringing in the perception again. I think consciousness is the interesting word at the moment where we can say, well, do we refer to it conscious to this thing or aspect? Do we refer to it as consciousness or the mind or the psyche or awareness? The closest one I can get to is awareness. Awareness is almost beyond, awareness is like the frequency beyond consciousness, without opening that up too much, which then in a way almost backs what we're saying is limited because it's limiting programs. Now the state of acceptance, I don't want to say, no, let me reword this. The state of acceptance, because it's the word acceptance. I don't want to do this, but I might have to slightly disagree with you on this word because you're using a certain word, Nigel, which is acceptance. That keeps us in a state of acceptance, which you're saying acceptance is a form of programming, if I've got that right, limiting program. Acceptance is part of a limited program. So when we're looking at the word acceptance, I think the biggest problem on the planet at the minute, or one of them, clearly in the top 5, is lack of acceptance of what's going on in our lives and the world. And that's creating a cycle, a perpetual cycle of many things, many aspects. Suffering, guilt. There's too many to open up here. Deceit, lack of understanding, is everything. There's so much surrounding that word. Because when we accept, when we've got a perception within our awareness, spontaneously, I'll use the word spontaneously, when we have that acceptance, life is so much more fluid and there is less, almost zero resistance. So I think you can put your acceptance with your dis-ease, because the dis-ease comes from non-acceptance. So ease is part of acceptance. If we start playing around with this, what you've written, Nigel. I mean, these are good points, though, which in itself blocks our ultimate telepathy. Well, telepathy is thought. Telepathy is the connection through awareness, through the vibrations and sounds and resonance of existence itself. So, brilliant. Yeah. Enjoyed that one. Thanks, Nigel.
Well, Colin, shall we call it a wrap?
We most certainly can. I can breathe again now. I can stop sweating.
We appreciate so much you allowing me to do this. Allow us to peek behind the curtain a little bit, peel back the layers of the mystery.
I don't think there's mystery at all, but thank you so much. I'm pleased you've done this. I'm so happy. I have to say this because it's not because I consciously wish to remain. I mean, for many years I've wished to remain hidden. That's why I didn't do so many other public things. But then I was inspired to obviously become more public, even in this small corner of the world. But something else which I'd like to say, if I may. And it goes back to a conversation we had. It is when people know your business and they want to, find out who somebody is and go and peel the layers off of somebody else. We're not in a vibration of awareness on the planet yet, where that trust is across the board with all people. And I think we have a tendency, because for me, most of the time, what you see, what you get, what you see is what you get. This is what this energy is, by and large. But I think there's a protective nature within the mind, when we both know this, where once aspects of an individual is revealed, locally or publicly, some minds will use that, knowledge or information in what can often be negative terms. And we need to overcome these frequencies to get past that. Because until we do, we're going to keep encountering what we do in our personal lives and globally, what we're seeing. We've got to get it beyond this ego mind, or vibration. It's so important because so much of what we're seeing is ego driven. So much of the negativity. And we've got to, I believe, we've got a beautiful opportunity to, in this regarding this spiritual space, or the spiritual space internationally across the board, there's an opportunity to get everything as clean and as clear and as pure, where everybody's supporting each other as much as possible. And I'm not talking about a far off, sense of utopia. I mean, it's not about utopia. We are light. We are that one thing. And anybody in the spiritual space what's got anger or jealousy or resentment towards others in the spiritual space, it need to kind of just try and sort it out a little bit and help be supported, because it's just conditions anyway. But stop the spread of it into a spiritual space. We know it's only the human mind working and functioning as it does. But when we bring in, which I've been waiting to do, or which I've been aware of while we've been doing this, when we bring in those spiritual guides and beings from those phenomenal planes into this presence with each and every one of us, when we're in their presence, in the spiritual space and anywhere else, everywhere on the planet, it changes the game completely. And it's not so much that it's a hierarchy or an authority energy. It's the complete opposite. Their presence is a presence of something which may even be beyond love, if that is even imaginable. Something more purer than what we imagine as love. And when they're present, they permeate the space with that. And that for me is probably the most magnificent thing we can, all of us, can ever be present in relation to the light of our own soul.
I almost forgot that I'm doing this interview. So thank you for those beautiful final words, Colin. Of course, they're not final because you're going to continue sharing yourself with us. Thank you so much for sharing a part of your story with us today.
But no, thank you. There's nothing for me to be thankful. Thank you. And thank you for giving the time and allowing this energy to go into the space what we've been into tonight. Because it's rare, it is rare. It's never happened. I've never been interviewed. This is like, I call it the first official interview ever, which is true. And I know people see glimpses of who we are, not just Colin, but everybody else. But it's because it's the spiritual teachings what's most important. It's not the person speaking the teachings. It's the teachings which are most important, and that's not playing down all of us, because we're all speaking spiritual teachings, and we are beautiful beings. But in this journey to enlightenment, this spiritual path, we need to test the teachings and put them into practice and walk the talk, and not be attached to false gurus and charismatic leaders, etc. And just see and be the beauty in everything we are. But so thank you for giving me the space to step into that kind of those frequencies, because it's not often I get the chance to do it, which is very rare. So thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and thank you to everybody who's joined us, and especially thank you to Ava for behind the scenes doing all this work, what she's done. Amazing. Maybe we can just do a couple of announcements then, just before we finish. What do you think?
Sure.
And we can get wrapped up. So first thing then, let's mention yours next week then, next Sunday. So for everybody what didn't hear us in the beginning, we've got a lovely Shanti next Sunday evening, and for the foreseeable Sunday each month. She's going to be holding space and leading the ISIS.
ISIS Healing Circle. Although we've now determined that the world doesn't need healing, it just needs more acceptance.
The Temple of Isis. I'm just going to watch that to one side. Temple of Isis Healing next Sunday, everybody. And as you can see, it's Shanti who's going to be leading it. It's going to be amazing energy. Absolutely, I love it. Of course, it's thank you. Perfect, Ava. Monday night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every evening, UK time, 5 o'clock. We have the absolutely beautiful Pauline Barfather, thank you, doing daily meditations. Please join Pauline and everybody else if you want just 30 minutes peace and quiet. That's there. We've got the lovely Tina. I never said Tina Turner. Tina Thacker on Friday evening. She'll be doing a demonstration of mediumship. Expect the unexpected on that one. We're really looking forward to Tina joining us. On Tuesday evening, I've got something where I can get my teeth into, which is artificial intelligence and spiritualism. And this was brought about by the conversation with Veronica Jenkins, a beautiful interview with Veronica about her new book, Awakenings, and to the extent of what extent do we use AI in spiritual teachings and with spirit. So that's going to be quite an interesting. I've got a few bits to say on that one, trust me. As more so as a writer as well. So that's Tuesday. And I think that's it. Hopefully we will. Oh, that's the book. Yeah. I thought, what's it got here? Yes. We're just finalising the dates for the mediumship weekend and spiritual guides. But hopefully, I really would like to put something on in this week. Maybe an open circle or channeling or something one evening. It looks like it might be tomorrow night. But don't be surprised if we all of a sudden put something on tomorrow night, guys. Or Thursday, Wednesday, I don't know. So, Shanti, thank you so much. Amazing. Can't see why anybody who's going to be interested in listening to this lot, but
this was an absolute pleasure, and I think this was just absolutely brilliant. Everything that you said was just brilliant. It was gold, and everybody, I'm just excited for everybody who's going to get to hear this conversation. So thank you again, Colin. Thank you so much.
You tagged my hands behind me back. When we do it on Zoom, there's lots more people present, so I can maneuver quick from all this. I've got nobody to use to maneuver and pull me out of this. You cornered me totally. Thank you so much. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, everybody. Let's have a look. Margaret, Sue, everybody, lovely. Absolutely. I hope you enjoyed it, guys. And Nigel, beautiful stuff. So, Francis, Chanda, Rhea, I'm going through the names now, I'm going up backwards. So lots of love to everybody, especially to yourself, to Ava, to Spirit, to everybody who's present. Trip the light, fantastic. Let's sort this planet out and let's have some peace, guys.